Did you guys get the announcement? I didn't hear anything.
Which
You did?
announcement?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Recording in progress announcement.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Is that the
yes,
one?
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, well, hello and welcome everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. It's good to see you again. I'm going to turn off the waiting room so everybody else can just jump right in. Today is our second session of designing an EdTech makerspace project. I know you guys have made a lot of progress in the Moodle and reading through your guides and stuff. So we will kind of do some reflection and sharing today. While we're waiting, I'm going to give other people just a couple more minutes to join. If you want to jump into this Jamboard, you can scan the QR code on the screen or use the link in the chat. And this is just, there are two frames. The first frame is for your reflections on section 1. The second frame is for reflections from section 2. So if you guys want to jump in and add some reflections to the Jamboard while we wait for the rest of our group to get in, that would be great. And so you'll notice that I have the topics there for both of the sections, but really the questions are geared toward those connected practices that we talked about in our first session together. So the topic for section 1 was identifying needs and content options, but the connected practice was understanding OER and fair use of other people's content. So I kind of am curious to know if you guys feel like you've learned something new or interesting regarding the two connected practices. Okay, and let's see who we got here. I think we've almost got everybody on. Hi, Jana. Hi, Marlena. Good to see everybody. Okay, since we've got a good group here, I would like if Mario would introduce himself, only because Mario, we had a time zone mix up and he wasn't able to come for session 1, but I want to make sure he has a chance to meet the group. So Mario, could you tell us what you teach and what inspired you to take the course?
Okay. Well, I've been in adult ed for over 20 years. Right now I'm teaching math for adults. I've done ELA before, and I also teach RLA with literacy volunteers. I'm a Sharon's co-worker. We're at different sites. And what inspired me to do this actually was my supervisor, who was very inspirational in joining me into this group. But I'm actually enjoying it. I know that I can use this with my students. It's going to be very fun, hopefully, for them, and interactive. So this is going to give me a lot of resources to share with them. Great.
Thank you for sharing, Mario. Don't you love a good inspirational supervisor?
Yeah.
Funny. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the Jamboard and see if we've added anything real quick. Is everybody able to get into it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm not. Don't know why my mouse isn't working. That's okay, I'll just close this. All right. Interested to see, okay, we don't have anything there yet. Okay, Marlena did add to frame 2, strategies need to be realistic and accessible for both learners and instructors. Awesome, great thought there. Section 1, someone added, it was good to read about the library project and how collaboration. Sure you're finishing that thought. Yeah, go ahead, you guys. Yes, okay, great. Someone says having public free material is important when sharing strategies. Other instructors can't use closed paid materials. Yes, exactly. So if we're talking about a sharing ecosystem, but we're sharing a paid curriculum that someone else, their program doesn't want to pay for it, then, kind of defeats the purpose of creating all of these great open resources. Okay, great. Someone put OER permissions for use are very important to follow. I would like more information about this. Great. So you guys will see that I have added exit tickets to the course. That would be something that I really would love for you to add to your exit ticket so that we can make sure to include more resources in the guide and in the course itself. And I will be happy to follow up after this and share resources. I also could just go ahead and say that the Creative Commons website is a great place to start if you haven't checked that out. And Wikimedia Commons is also great. There are also just some great Wikipedia articles on fair use. There's one I always refer to that shows you how to provide the proper attribution. Let me see if I can pull that up. Wikimedia best practices for attribution. Yeah, here it is. I'll throw the link to this in the chat. But there are plenty of resources out there for guidance around how to responsibly use other people's material.
Can I add a quick thing that would probably be too much to type? One thing that I really love is that the Department of Ed has a teacher verification model spreadsheet that shows everyone's submissions for like instructor created work. But the thing is that because we're all busy, our top goal is not to make things accessible to other teachers. It's usually for instructors submitting, it's going to be to make sure that we've submitted and can then give hours to our students, which makes sense. So that repository is cool, but it doesn't end up having sharing as the main goal because some of the stuff is subscription based. And so it's kind of cool to have a space where the top priority is this accessible no matter your institution, no matter your student's situation, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, actually a program I came from the state had a similar thing. And we always ran into, you know, like for example, there were some great K-12 things, but they were like, we don't want you to put this on your site because we don't want everybody to see it. We didn't intend for that, you know? So it's like, it does get kind of sticky, and it is great, like with crowded learning, I think, because it's almost like a separate space where we're creating things that everybody wants to be free and open and to share. So thank you so much for adding that. Great. Okay, great. And people are adding some more information about those resources. That's great. That's so cool. Okay, just looking back here, get a better yeah, open versus free. That was an eye opener for me too when I first started foraying into all of this, that is not the same thing. And that there are so many levels of openness too. Okay, I'm looking at the second frame now. Isn't the Adult Learner Variability Navigator is kind of mind-blowing and amazing. So I'm glad you guys liked that. Yeah, absolutely, Jana. Absolutely. And that is so central that it's different, right? We're not just making something we use with our class. In fact, like the EdTech Makerspace is two levels above that. It's not just I'm making something for everybody to use. It's actually I'm training people how to make things for other people to use in their house, right? So it's like way up here. But it's, yeah, just such an important process to start at this level so that the trickle down is really effective. Okay, so let's get back into our agenda for today. Sorry, switching over to my slides. Okay, so today we are going to do a little wrap up of sections 1 and 2. We are actually going to do a little makerspace. This is one of those things that I was like, oh my gosh, we should do a little makerspace. And I started doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I think this? But I think it'll be really good. We're not going to try and like do a finished product. We're just going to dip our toes into it a little bit so that we see kind of how the process plays out. So we're going to do a little mini makerspace today. And then we'll preview sections 3 and 4, which are the next sections that you guys are going to visit before our next session. And I am going to give you guys, my goal is to give you guys at least 20 minutes to get together as a group, or if you're working individually, time for you to just work. So just some dedicated time to, while these thoughts are fresh, get back into the guide and the workbook and get that stuff done. Okay, great. I'm seeing a link to the info on the TVM filters. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Glad that opened up a door here. Okay, so I have added to our Moodle some exit tickets. If you could go and fill out those exit tickets, they're not long, but it's such valuable feedback for us on the course. This is a pilot, so we really want to make sure that we work out any kinks this time around before we run it again. So you guys are guinea pigs and we appreciate you. There's one in there for section 1 and for section 2. So to start our day today, we're going to wrap up sections 1 and 2. So sections 1 and 2, we're focused on identifying needs, looking at content options to use in your makerspace, and then looking at the EdTech tools that you'll use in your project. So what we're going to do is a little role play. We're going to get into pairs, and each person is going to give a summary of their project to their partner as if you're recruiting them to participate. So you want to make sure to nail down what is going to be the final product, how will it benefit me as a teacher, why should I participate in your EdTech makerspace, what is the need that you're filling, what am I going to learn if I participate in your EdTech makerspace, and then within all of that, make sure you're mentioning what content will be used and what tools will be involved, okay? It's okay if you don't have concrete set in stone decisions on all of this, okay? Just do your best to communicate those few key things that you covered in sections 1 and 2. And, you know, we're all going to be gracious to each other. It doesn't need to be perfect, but I think it'll be a good way to kind of jog the mind, right? All right, so I'm going to set up some breakout rooms. Everybody ready? Any questions before we do this? Now's the time. No questions. Okay. All right, you're gonna have 5 minutes in your breakout room. So again, it's a summary. It's a quick, this is what I'm doing. This is what you could learn if you participate. This is what we're working with. Done, okay? But you wanna make sure to sell it and see if they wanna be a part of it. All right, we're going to create, how many will we need? We will need, I'm gonna do 6 breakout rooms. Some How did it go? Did you recruit each other for your for your own makerspace?
You convinced me.
How did it go, everyone? How did that make you feel? Did it give you a good sense of what you've accomplished over the last 2 weeks? Let me know. Unmute or add in the chat.
I mean, we were talking about how even though this is going to be a group project, splitting off in the future, trying to adapt it for contexts that are slightly different. If we have the group project down, adapting it's going to be a lot easier because the routine will largely stay in place. But some of the content might shift. We might change one tool versus all of them. So adapting for a context, an Ella context that's not just healthcare focused, but maybe, you know, finding ways to integrate and use the work we've done so that it suits slightly different contexts would be really cool.
Awesome. Anybody else? How did that make you feel about the goals you've set?
In my case, it made me anxious because this is just looking at all the resources that we have. I mean, there is, and I'm just focusing into the math, for example, and I'm in the group with Marlani, and they are having all those ideas, and they are wonderful and fantastic. But I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just lost in this huge and massive just the resources that we have, and they are organized in certain ways, but just finding them is very time consuming. And I mean, if we can we just focusing, for example, in the healthcare and the CNA, and just putting those resources together, and then probably linking resources that has already exist and they are open and free. So that would be wonderful. But at the same time, I don't think we have enough time to merge, to be honest. I mean, it's just like to finish a whole project, I will have to make it very small, probably. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay, so a couple of things I want to address about what you said. Thank you for sharing. It's always good when somebody's just like, yeah, I'm anxious about this. That helps us know what we need to work on. Okay, so first of all, I want to say to everyone, be sure to limit your scope. Know what you will work with and what you're not going to work with. So that applies to content, right? We cannot possibly go and adapt all of the adult ed content that exists, no matter how amazing it may be. So limit your scope. What content are you working with? Make a concise list, unless you're curating, in which case you're gonna be bringing in a lot of content, but be sure to focus on limiting your scope with content and then also with tools. So remember, when you gather all your participants together and carry out this project with them, you will be training them how to use the tools. So training them how to use 10 different tools is going to take you, I mean, my goodness, 2 years, I would say. So be sure to limit your scope. Make a list of content. You can tweak along the way as you're planning, but make a small list of the content you're working with. Make a small list of the tools that you're going to work with. And as you're making considerations and going through the guide, take stuff out of the list, put stuff in the list, but don't continue to grow the list to the point where your project is not feasible. Does that make sense? And then the other thing I want to say is that you're not doing the project, right? You're facilitating a group of educators who will do the project. So, you know, it doesn't eliminate all of the work that goes into it ahead of time. Actually, I think Jeff and I know that it maybe increases the amount of work that goes into it, but be sure to think strategically about what are the things I can get the EdTech Makerspace participants to do feasibly, what is within the skills or the training that I'm providing, and what work do I need to do ahead of time. That being said, we're going to go ahead and do our little EdTech Makerspace, our mini EdTech Makerspace, to kind of look at some of the logistics that go into a makerspace. So we've gone from the more theoretical side of things, I feel like, in sections 1 and 2, where we're thinking about what the overall goals are and what we'll be working with and what tools we want to work with. And we're moving into the more practical in sections 3 and 4. Actually, what are we creating? What are we making? What are we curating? And what logistically do we need for our participants to have so that the project is successful? Nicole says it was helpful to get some guidance and some tools. Great. Yes, Harshika, I will share the link to my slides right now before I move on. So in this little mock EdTech Makerspace that we're about to get into, I'm going to go through the first 2 steps that you guys have already gone through and kind of explain my thinking behind the EdTech Makerspace. And then you guys are going to do a little bit of the project that I've created. So you are now entering Rachel's brain. Proceed with caution. Keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. And I'm going to explain my thought process as I created today's mini EdTech Makerspace. So identifying needs, this is what you guys went through in section 1. Some needs that I identified, first is that we need more content options in section 1 of the EdTech Makerspace guide. Another need I found is that we need mobile-friendly activities to help facilitators track the progress of the whoever's taking the course. Okay, so I felt like if I had an activity in the guide or workbook that you guys could do on the go, but I could see the results, then that would kind of make the guide a little better. I also thought that it would be helpful to anyone taking the course if they had a template to work with throughout the course, a project charter, or like something where they could add the key elements of their EdTech Makerspace project into one place to guide their path. So these fall into the 3 categories of project formats that you read about at the end of section 2 in the guide: curation, adaptation, and creation. The first one, if I wanted to create a project around adding more content options and resources to the guide, that would be a curation project. The second one, if I'm thinking I want to take part of the guide, I was thinking the guiding questions, and make mobile friendly activities, that would be an adaptation. And then for the third one, making a template and creating something that does not exist in the guide currently would be a creation project. So you're starting from scratch to create something completely new, but something that's also shareable and reusable. And that's why I said a template rather than just a project charter. So I identified those 3 needs, and I've also identified the content that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the project design and facilitation guide, and my projects are designed around that content. Now, for the curation project type, I would look into more content, and maybe not even more content, but I would think about what are the parameters around my content, right? So I could say, oh, I need more content options for the guide, but will I take anything? Will I take YouTube videos and articles and activities, or is there a specific type of content that I need? Okay, so just something to think about if you're doing curation. The content question is much larger than if you're doing adaptation or creation. But the main content that I'll be using is the project design and facilitation guide. So I've looked into the licensing for this content, and I know that I can share and adapt the guide, even commercially. So just throwing that out there, if anybody wants to try and make a buck off of the guide, you can do that. You can share and adapt it for commercial purposes. But I do have to provide attribution to the creator. Sell, says Jeff. Okay, so that's my need. Those are my needs. This is my content. I know how to responsibly go about using the content because I know what the licensing is behind it. And then I'm in section 2 of my guide now, planning my ETMS project. And I'm thinking now about goals before tools. And so I want to make strategic decisions about the tools that I use. So I want you guys to throw in the chat some of your ideas. What tools could I use to organize and share content for that first section of the guide where it gives you different links to open educational resources? Can you guys think of an EdTech tool that would help me organize resources and share them with people taking this course? Go ahead in the chat. Okay, thanks, Hershey. Google Site, Wakelet. Any other ideas? Those are great curation tools. Flipgrid, interesting. Marlena, that's an interesting choice. You'll have to explain more about how Flipgrid would help me. Okay, Anha says Jamboard. Karina says Glide. Great, absolutely. Okay, great. So these are some good ideas. Okay, Marlene, I thought so because Flipgrid is the video. So I was like, how am I going to do that? That's okay. Lots of tools. Google Drive would be a tool I could use. Okay, so section 2 would have taken me through a process of helping to eliminate some of those tools, thinking about considerations around using the tools. Jeff is saying Padlet, which is the tool that I ultimately settled on, was Padlet. I would say Padlet and Wakelet are 2 great curation tools because we know that people can then, they can find things easily because they can find it through a link. They can get to it without signing in. But then they can also make copies of Padlets and Wakelets and adapt whatever collections you've put out there. So I did choose Padlet ultimately, but these were all great thoughts. Next question, what tools could I use to create mobile-friendly quizzes if I wanted all of you to be able to make progress in my course on the go? You're not always sitting at a laptop working through this content. So what is an EdTech tool that I could use in my project to transform some of the guide into little comprehension checks or little assessments? Any ideas? Padlet is free-ish. I wouldn't call it free. You only get like 3 pads, 3 Padlets, 3. Yeah, so it's not great in that sense. Okay, Google Forms and Socrative. Ooh, Socrative is intense. Yes, absolutely. I did choose Google Forms. And then finally, creating a project charter template. Can anybody think of a tool that I could teach my participants to use to create various templates of what we think a good project charter might look like? Marlena says Jamboard. I think that would be cool. That would be really cool. You can have different frames for, you know, these are our goals. You could put images on it. I think that'd be fun. Yeah, shareable whiteboard. So Jamboard, or yeah, a Google site. Okay, I think Google site would be difficult because if I wanted everybody to be able to use the project charter, how are they going to make a copy of it and edit it easily? I think also another thing I'd be concerned about is training everyone to design an entire website within my project. So things to think about, no right answer. And then Janice says Google Docs, which would be another great option for a template. Okay, good. So we've thought through some of the tools. I'm done with section 2. And well, no, I'm not done my project formats, but we've already talked about this. For our project today, we're going to use the different project formats to break into groups. Okay, so as I'm going through my considerations around these 3 different projects, there are really 3 EdTech Makerspace projects that I'm doing, or at least 3 different types of project. I want you guys to think about what group do you want to be in. So you could choose a group that is the same kind of project that you're doing, or your project might include 1 or more of these elements, in which case you just choose whatever seems most interesting to you. Okay, so as I'm going through, be thinking about what group you want to be in. So the first project or aspect of my project is going to be curation. I have already in the guide, I know we have links to OER Commons, we have links to the skill directory and crowded learning. So we have those, but I want them to be easier to access. I want them to be nice and organized, and I want to add a few more resources to those resources. And so the training focus here is I would train my participants how to use a curation tool like Padlet, and I would show them how I want it to be organized so that everybody can get right into it and know exactly what they're looking for. And in some cases, you may also be training them in the alignment of content to different skills or objectives. So an example of that would be in our digital skills library. In addition to the curation work that they're doing, they really have to know how to align the content that they find to skills. And so that might be another aspect of training within your curation project. So the mission for our curation project is to use Padlet. We'll add more content options to the guide, and they will be organized by content area. The next project that I'm doing is an adaptation project. So I know that in our guide, we have guiding questions. That's something that we already have in there, but it's not optimal. It's not in its optimal form, because right now they're just questions you read and think about. I want them to be questions that you actually answer and that I can see your answers. So I'm going to train my EdTech Makerspace participants to use Google Forms. I'll train them what the tool is, best practices for using it, and then they are going to work together to transform the guiding questions of the guide into Google Forms activities. And finally, we have a creation project. In this project, there is no project charter in the guide. There's no single document for you to be planning out except for your workbook. I hope you know this is all just theoretical, I'm just pretending, but there is no project charter template. And so that's a missing component, and we actually need to create something kind of from scratch. So here I would get my EdTech Makerspace participants together. We would learn about how to create something that's reusable, that's shareable, something that's nice and clean and templated that other people can easily adapt for their own purposes, okay? I might even teach them how to use an EdTech tool like Jamboard and then throw it at them and say, okay, create a project template with Jamboard. You know how to use it now. Show me what ideas you come up with. And then we could collaborate and say, oh, well, I like this part of this Jamboard and this part of this Jamboard. And so we're going to put it together. So that would be what a creation project would look like, really kind of starting from scratch and using creativity and ideas to create something that's templated and reusable. Okay, so that's the creation one. So these are our 3 project formats: curation, adaptation, and creation. And I want to emphasize here that not every project is going to be just one thing. Some EdTech Makerspace projects will include all 3 of these components, and some will be just one. But if you have a project in mind and you're thinking, oh, I have a couple different things here, that's fine. That happens, and it's still totally workable. So we're going to break into groups based off of these 3 project formats, and you're going to get into a Google Sheets doc. There are instructions in there, but basically what I want you to do is go to your tab in this resource tracker that I've created and complete the first row only. Okay, you don't need to go through and complete the whole activity. This is just a mock-up project. But I want you to go in and kind of think about, okay, let's put our heads together. How would we be doing this first row and just filling out this first row? Within the tracker, there are some questions that I want you to think about, because I want you to think about this not as a project participant, but as someone who is planning a project. What were the things that I had to do ahead of time to guide you through the process? Were they sufficient? How do you set things up so that people who are in your EdTech Makerspace project know what they're supposed to be doing, are successful, can track themselves, and you have something at the end of it that is ready to go, okay? Any questions about the work that we're doing in the groups while I set up the breakout rooms? Just unmute yourself. Welcome back. I want to thank everyone for participating in this EdTech Makerspace project. I'm so excited that we have edited the EdTech Makerspace Design and Facilitation Guide, and now it is more robust and engaging than ever before. Thank you all for your contributions. We will be emailing out your certificates in about 10 weeks. Okay, no, seriously though, how did it go? I have some discussion questions. So I'm actually going to launch into those. Actually, I'll go ahead and launch into those. Let's go through those. But if you guys have any like big thoughts that are brewing right now, just unmute and spout them out. So we are going into sections 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are really nailing down what is your EdTech Makerspace project going to look like when it's playing out. And so one of the first things you'll be thinking about is how to design the resources that you're creating or adapting or curating with others in mind. Thinking about what you just did, curating, creating a template, or adapting to a Google form. Do you think that what you created would have been designed in a way that others could easily access it and or reuse it? If you want to add your answer in text, then it's in the resource tracker. It's the last tab of discussion questions, or you can just let us know. So based off of what you just dipped your toes into, would your end product have been something that others could access, navigate, use? Creators said, yes, good. Theoretically, absolutely, because we didn't create anything, okay?
I think, yeah, creators, we were thinking about making a document and we hammered out the sections of that document. Given the sections that we had, if we developed it fully, yeah, I think it would be something others could follow.
Nice, great. Great, so curators, curious to know, do you think that the way that you were organizing these new content options is a way that other educators could have understood?
I think if we had gone ahead and done it, using the one link, I think we could have, because the Padlet was set up in a very organized manner, that we would have been able to drop in the different content areas very easily, and it would have been very usable for them.
Awesome. Okay, and adapters, I'm guessing you're saying if you had actually created the Google form, it would have been easy to reuse. Is that correct?
We did, and
Oh, you did?
the old way that I used to always force copies of the editable, the teacher-facing form hasn't worked for me for the last 2 months. Like I used to just change the edit link to /copy and everyone could make a copy, and someone told me recently that doesn't work anymore, and sure enough, I tried it again and it still doesn't work. So I need to do a little Google form research. Yeah, they told me you have to collaborate. You just have to add collaborators now, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to have a million collaborators on these single forms. Yeah.
Right. But if the copy link had worked, definitely it would have been great and reusable. Okay, good.
Yes. And yes, Jeff, with Google Forms, that changing edit to copy doesn't seem to be working, at least not from my end.
You do have to unrestrict it first, right? So I wonder if that's what's happening.
I'm not sure what's happening, but I've done it 100 times and
interesting.
It's probably user error. That's why I said theoretically I need a little more time to work out the bugs there.
Okay, so then setting the expectations, right? So after you've recruited participants and you're getting ready to get them started on whatever they're working on, setting expectations. Were the participation expectations for this project clear? Why or why not? Go ahead, you guys. I won't feel bad.
I will say, because as you mentioned, there are a lot of layers to this, making sure that we remembered that we were working with people like us in this class who are making a charter for other people who will take this class, who will make a project for teachers who will be trained on, just because it's by nature like very complicated. I think that part, the clarity asking you was helpful, because it's really hard to dig down into the multiple layers and make sure that I'm keeping them straight. So that was the only thing that I had to stop and clarify.
Good. Well, and that brings up a good lesson learned, which is that no matter how clear you make things, you always will have to provide support. So that's another good thing to think about. Okay. Okay, then finally, were the materials that were provided for this project helpful? So you guys are going to be getting into creating guides and resource trackers. So be critical of my resource tracker. Did it help? Was it confusing? What do you think? What would have improved it? Okay, Nicole likes it. Okay, I'm sorry, Hershey. I'm using the term project charter. It's just a term that I know for project planning, but it's just a project overview, really. So just ignore it. I don't. It's not important. Okay. All right. Great. So sections 3 and 4. Hold on. Sections 3 and 4 are, like I said, getting into more of the practical aspects of planning this EdTech Makerspace project. So in these sections, you're going to think about what is the end user experience with the final product that you're creating. Okay, so if you're creating a library of resources, How do you want them organized? How do you want them to be accessed? If you're adapting something, how is that final activity going to be accessed and reused? Those kinds of things. What considerations will you make around accessibility? That's our connected practice for section 3. So you're going to learn a little bit about how to design resources and instructional materials in an accessible way and different frameworks for that. And then finally, what kind of guides will your participants need to be successful? And so that particularly comes into play with the EdTech tools. If you're having them use Google Forms, what kind of guidance do they need to make their Google form in the way that you want it made? Maybe checklists, maybe how-tos, tutorials, and things like that to really learn the tool. And then section 4 is all about training instructors and creating resources. So how are you going to recruit? Hopefully our little activity earlier got you a little step closer to that. How are you going to set expectations? So let people know exactly what is expected of them. Do they need to attend every synchronous session? Do they need to watch a recording of something? Are you expecting them to create a set number of resources or to contribute a certain number of things? And then how are you going to track what's curated, adapted, or created? So that resource tracker that you guys were just in. All right, so that's a little preview. I want you guys to have some time to work. Let's see, it's 1:34. What time is that for you guys? I don't remember. We are going to get into your groups, or if you're working individually on your project, that's totally fine. You can work individually. And I want you to check your progress so far. So you're done with sections 1 and 2, and then think about what we covered today. And do you have any takeaways going into these next sections that you want to sync up with your group and say, oh, we need to make sure X, Y, Z. Okay. So I'm going to recreate the breakout rooms again. With your groups, recreate, and we have 4 right now. We have the anonymous badgers, yes, the innovative monkeys. We have group 4, and then we have Mario. Mario, actually, you just stay in here. I'm not going to create a separate room. So feel free to hang out here in the main room. Okay, so I'm going to open the rooms. Stick around if you want to ask questions, but if you want to go and get into your groups and work together, we will do groups until 1:50, whatever time that is your time. Somebody say it, please.
It's 11:35, so 11:50.
Hopping around to your groups, you guys have such exciting ideas, and I'm excited. I hope you guys are energized too. Our next steps after today, forgot to animate that, are, okay, yeah. Yes, okay, we're good. Complete the exit tickets. So I told you guys those are in Moodle now under the read and learn sections. Begin reading section 3. We're going to be finishing up section 3 and 4 before our next meeting. And I am recommending, and this is something I thought about before our session today, but I'm feeling even more passionate about it right now after going to all of your groups. Create a mock-up of your final product. So if you're curating, I would encourage you to get into Wakelet, Glide, Padlet, whatever you're wanting to use, and start plugging some things in, like start seeing how you're going to organize it. If you're adapting, go ahead and adapt one chunk of whatever material you're adapting. If you're creating, go ahead and start working up a template yourself. But I think this is a good point where all of your ideas are buzzing, and it's time to just like put the pen to paper and see what you are going to end up with at the end of your project. I am going to set up some office hours. I'll post the link and the schedule in Moodle. I can say right now, guaranteed that 1 week from today at this very same time, I'll have an office hour. So if you guys want to plan to jump in next week, and it'll be no slides, just chatting and supporting if you need it. Okay, so that's it for today. Any questions? You can ask me now, or you can reach out to me on Moodle. Mario messaged me on, was it Mario or Angel? I can't remember. Somebody messaged me on Moodle last week, and it was the first time I've ever been in like a Moodle chat. It was kind of cool. So message me on Moodle, or you can email me, whatever works best for you. But thank you guys so much for joining today. I hope this was helpful in fleshing out your ideas. Okay, Nicole, the exit tickets are within each section. So like, if, all right, let me just share my screen, it'll be easier. So if you go to our course, you seeing this? Yes. Okay. Let's end my session. If you go to each section, so we have step 1, and then the exit ticket is at the bottom. Step 2, exit ticket is at the bottom of all the material. Good. Thank you.
Rachel, can you share where I can find the slides for the synchronous?
Yes, you mean for today's meeting?
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't
Absolutely.
find it. I only find the
If you go
for the
here,
group.
are you seeing this? So in course materials, links to synchronous session slides and recordings. So
I only see group 1, group 2, only the groups Jamboard and session 1 slides. Are those? No,
yeah,
those
that's
are-
it from the last session. And then today
I
I'll
don't-
add today's session.
I don't see the ones from today.
Yeah, I haven't added the ones from today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll add them right after this. I'll add the recording when it's ready and the slides.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other